In a world where nostalgia rages across the land, where everyone and their mother has a podcast, where there's still a movie trailer guy who says, in a world, three friends revisit films, shows, and games that molded them as they search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. Settle in and join us for Screen Refresh.
Welcome back to Screen Refresh, a show where we revisit the films, shows, and games that molded us as we search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. I'm your host, Laura, and I'm joined by my fellow Screen Refresh crew, Nick and Tim. Today, we'll be discussing the cinematic masterpiece, Spice World.
Hello there.
Welcome, guys.
Spice up your life, Laura.
Zig-a, zig-ah, indeed. So I'm so excited for this episode because I've literally been talking about doing this with you guys since the moment the word Screen Refresh left your lips. Like all of you, like you and Dean, when he told me, I just knew that Spice World would be my number one pick. Obviously, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was a close second, and we already covered that, which was such a blast. So I'm really happy to be here doing it.
Me too, in the 1-to-1 time frame that it takes to play the movie back as we discuss it. So let's go nice and slow.
Yes. Yeah. It's a very intense movie. That's why I have lots of notes.
Did you originally see the movie in theaters when it came out?
I did. So the movie came out in 1997 in England, but it came out in 98 in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about 8.5 years old, and my dad actually took me to see it in theaters. To say that Spice Girls was an obsession would be an understatement. They were everything.
They were
to me
huge back then, too.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're actually I looked it up, they're the best-selling girl group of all time. And they sold like over 100 million albums. And 97, 98 was like peak, because this was in between them releasing the album Spice and then releasing Spice World. So, I was just absolutely in their demographic as a kid, and I wanted to be like Sporty Spice. And yeah, so my dad was very selfless and took me to see it in theaters, and I remember absolutely loving it. So that's why when you guys started this podcast, the very first movie that came to mind when I think about what molded me as a child was Spice World.
I think this was kind of the peak, and then also not like a rapid decline, but it was kind of almost the end, because they did Spice in 97, they did Spice World, I think in 98 for the albums, and then they did Forever in 1999, but by that point, Jerry had left the Spice Girls. So This was right on the cusp of, let's do a movie about them being friends, but also what happens if they break up, followed by them breaking up a year later.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what happened. It kind of foreshadowed it in a certain way, the reason them breaking up being overwork. And that's essentially what Jerry cited as her reason for leaving, was they were completely overworked.
Well, if the movie shows any kind of bearance on real life, no wonder why they were overworked, because that schedule was packed.
Yeah, it was.
Completely also, packed. Didn't Jerry try a solo career for a bit? Because I know all of them ended up doing solo work for the most part. Mel C's album, it's still a bop. I still like her album. But I don't know what all of them did directly following this.
Yeah, they did all do solo projects. Mel C's, I agree with you that I think was also the most commercially successful. She is probably, arguably, the most vocally talented of the group. And I know that she was really embraced by the club scene.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best solo career to come out of the group. All of the other women did their own solo careers, but I think with Mel B, Scary Spice, she went on to be on America's Got Talent for years and years, and then had some baby drama with Eddie Murphy. So that's kind of why she was in the public eye. I know Emma Button was on the American Baking Show instead of the Great British Baking Show. It was the Great American Baking Show.
That's weird, because crossing the pond for the knockoff of one of the UK's best shows.
Yeah. So she was there for that. I have no idea what Posh Spice Victoria Beckham has done for the past 30 years. Who knows? She's
David
definitely
Beckham.
the most famous. Precisely. Yeah, she's by far the most famous of all of them. Really broke into fashion, which is unquestionably her better talent. As much as I love her in this movie, she's always made a joke of like how she was probably the least vocally talented in the group, and they always gave her like the smallest singing parts. And there were certain parts of the movie where when she started singing, they like started having applause in the background or like other sounds to kind of distract from her singing. So she was always just, I think, more of a visual aid for the group than anything
Visual
else.
aid.
But she's hilarious. I actually really liked her in this movie. I think she was very funny.
I think all of them were hilarious. I had never seen this, so going into this, I liked the Spice Girls during that time, but I never followed them outside of like, oh, I saw a music video. So to actually see them interact with each other and talk, it's actually a lot goofier and a lot more fun than I was expecting. I ended up loving it.
You loved it?
Oh, I love this
that's
movie.
What I was really excited to hear what you guys think. Because I imagine, so did you watch this before, or was this your first time as well?
It was my first time. I did not have the same sympathy as Tim. I didn't dislike it, but it was I am not the target demographic for this movie. During of my coming of age and today, some of the jokes like I was like laughing out loud pretty hard for, but I was having to focus kind of hard on keeping my attention through the movie. I had to really focus on keeping it here. I think at one point I did have to it sucks because like I have my phone for my notes and I use the Google Keep app for it. So everything I type in my phone, it'll show up on the computer and that's it. Because I hate having the laptop in front of me when I'm doing all of that. But it was really hard to stay in that app. I have to admit. It was good. Yeah. It was definitely good. But my one-time watch, I think, is enough for any more spice and I think my head would explode.
I will be buying this on DVD immediately after this recording to have on my shelf from now on.
Isn't it difficult to find?
It is.
This is a tricky one. Yeah.
It's like you have to find it through like third-party sellers and things because it doesn't seem to be like in circulation necessarily. So I don't know if it's just discontinued and you're just buying up remaining copies or if it's just not readily sold. So you're just having to go through like boutiques, labels and things.
It makes me wonder too, because it's technically a UK movie. Maybe we would have to look on the UK markets for it. Mm-hmm. Instead of it just being an American movie.
I mean, and that's absolutely the truth. I didn't realize what a huge movie for England this was. It's part of, in doing my research, I learned about this whole movement, I guess, that we went through as society in the 90s called Cool Britannia. And basically it encompassed not only the Spice Girls but also like Oasis becoming really big, like movies like Train Spotting and like just very British. I think like Snatch, wasn't that like 99, right?
Snatch was early 2000s. This I think would have been Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels during this time.
It was like so that was a really popular movement of Britain being cool again. So
it only took us 200 years to get over the last thing.
They pissed a lot of people off, let's be honest. When you try to invade everybody, you're not really the cool kid for a while. But so really excited to dive into it with you guys. Just a couple of quick notes. The director of this movie was a gentleman named Bob Spears. Mm-hmm. He was also known for directing Absolutely Fabulous and Fawlty Towers, which were two very British shows that my late grandmother used to watch. She was a British subject.
Did you ever watch any of those with her?
Fawlty Towers, I did.
Okay, if you like Fawlty Towers, you'll probably also like, he did Are You Being Served, which was about a department store. That's also funny.
Okay.
And the skit show, A Bit of Fry and Laurie with Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, he also did some of those episodes from there. So like a ton of great British TV.
So that'll explain a couple of the scenes we'll chat about later on.
It's probably a lot of those cameo connections, even though a lot of the people talking about cameos in this movie, it seemed to just be like my kids love them, or my niece or nephew love them, and this was the easiest way to get autographs and a picture with them was to just, yes, I will do your movie.
Yes, exactly. So that I don't think he went on to really direct anything too big after this.
So you're not going to talk about That Darn Cat?
Well, that actually came out before this. That was his only other movie, but I didn't actually watch that. Have you seen that?
Neither did I. I just remember the
Okay.
Disney Channel Surfers, or whatever they're called, did like a segment on it years ago, and I was like, oh. And then I didn't watch it because I had no agency as like a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I had never seen it. Although speaking of the mouse, they originally wanted to do the Spice Girls movie, and the Spice Girls declined because of it being Disney-fied. You're not going to get assless chaps in a Disney version of Spice World. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
that.
so many jokes, and I feel like all of the odd surreal humor that they had throughout this film here and there would have ended up getting removed.
Yeah.
Not because it was like bad, but I think it's just because they wouldn't trust their audiences to be like, kids won't find this funny.
Yeah, which I ended up loving it. Although I believe it was also referenced that movies related to bands and musical groups like A Hard Day's Night were a really big inspiration for this
Oh, yeah.
movie. And that's why you have a lot of those little side quests that they go on. I think that kind of pulls from that. But this actually was and still remains to be the highest grossing movie with a musical group, about a musical group of all time. So it went on to gross 10.5 million in its opening weekend in the US, it broke the record for highest grossing movie weekend during the Super Bowl. And because there's a lot of girls that didn't care about the Super Bowl, so they went and saw Spice World instead. And then you also had 56 million for grossing altogether, which I was curious. In today's money, that's $110 million. So it wasn't bad at all. It was completely critically panned, but it was very successful monetarily. So box office hit, but really just critically panned altogether.
Do you think
But
that
everyone had fun.
the era of band movies are done, like post Spice World? Because once they did Spice World, and once they started doing like the meta parody movies, like Josie and the Pussycats, of doing granted it's from the cartoon, but it's kind of the meta idea of a band movie and turning it on its head. I don't think we've really gotten anything like that since then.
The last one I think they were all spoofs, because the last one I could think of was Together, and they weren't even a real band, but that was a movie about band.
There's also the parody one with what's his name, Andy Samberg,
Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stoppin'.
Yeah,
Such a good movie.
because I think
Kinda
it's
for
just there's no groups anymore. Like, I know K-pop is its own big thing, and there might be. It's not in our market when it comes to like movies that they may be participating in. But like after the rise and fall of like the boy bands and like the girl group sensations, it's just like I can't name any after 2000s.
Yeah, it's like the last one they possibly could have gotten away with would have been like One Direction.
Yeah, and I can't think of any. And at this point now, more artists are focused on solo careers or their own name. And then now we're getting, like the Freddie Mercury movie, or, Queen, but technically his movie, Elton John, Elvis. Mm-hmm. They did that Amy Winehouse one recently. They have a Pharrell one coming out soon.
Another Bob Dylan one with Timothée.
Mm-hmm.
That one's coming out soon. Yeah, we have that. I think really what artists are focusing on now when it comes to movies are concert movies, because you just had Beyonce's concert movie and Taylor Swift's concert movie come out, and those were both wildly successful, but they were just concert movies because it's so hard to get tickets to these concerts.
I was at Target the other day, and I saw they had the album for Ghost, and it's like songs from the recent movie. And I'm like, what movie came out? And I forgot that they also did one recently too. Just it was nowhere near as popular as Taylor Swift and what's her name, Beyonce.
Wait, Ghost,
Yeah.
like Square Hammer Ghost?
Yeah.
Oh wow, huh? I have to check that out.
It came out like, I don't know, a couple months ago, like just on the tail end of Taylor's movie. So
yeah, band movies are dead. If anybody is aware of any banned movies, sound off in wherever you find a spot to put a comment.
Yeah. But to your point too, like I don't think after One Direction, I'm not really sure which band nowadays we would have that for. Like who would be.
That's why with the rise of nostalgia again and the resurgence of bands from our younger years, they need to do band movies for bands that are not like the hot new band. It's like, we're going to do a band movie for Creed, or we're going to do a band movie for like Panic at the Disco. Only Brandon Urie though, and like all of that stuff.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love a Creed movie. I want a Limp Bizkit movie. They're touring right now. Give me that. So, without further ado, we can go ahead and jump into the movie itself. I'm going to apologize in advance if you guys hear my paper notes flipping around, but I literally had to watch this movie twice. I watched it yesterday just with a friend. We were laughing, enjoying it, just kind of taking it in. And then I woke up this morning and I realized I could not give you a play-by-play of this movie because there are so many detours that this movie takes that I was worried I would get them out of order.
It's like a series of vignettes.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes too, listeners, whenever we do the notes, sometimes it's actually kind of difficult to write the notes for the movie we pick because it's been so long since we've actually seen them. So many times we get caught like we're actually just watching it and then we realize like, oh shit, like 5 minutes went by and a lot of stuff happened and we got to take notes on that. So it's actually very, very common to do. Sometimes it does take 2 watch throughs to get all of the notes because that first time is like you kind of want to enjoy it, not just analyze it.
Yeah.
There is one other thing that I'll mention that makes a lot of sense is I saw that the writer was Kim Fuller, who also is known for doing S Club 7 in Miami, S Club 7 in LA, Red Dwarf, and the Tracy Ullman Show. So it's like this weird mix of like, okay, all of these things make total sense in how this script ended up coming out.
Yeah. No, it does. And actually, another side note too, Kim Fuller's brother, I believe Kim is a man, is Simon Fuller, who basically produced and created American Idol. So, yeah, lots of deep connections in the music industry. So yeah, fun facts abound. Okay, so we start off our journey with the Spice Girls in a very psychedelic way. So it starts off with a performance of them on Top of the Pops, which was a popular show at the time. I don't know if it's still popular in England, but I know that it was popular in the 60s and 70s. I don't think I ever watched it growing up, but they're just going ahead and performing. And you have your opening credits introducing the 5 Spice Girls, the actresses, performers. And then it says that the movie is based on an idea by the Spice Girls and Kim Fuller, which I thought right away was really funny. It's like, aren't all movies ideas? So rather than it being based off of like a book or a screenplay or anything, it just says it's based off of an idea. So you already can tell we're going into a fever dream of a movie.
I appreciate that, because a lot of other movies, clearly they're just an idea and then they have to fill in the gaps. But this one just falls, they just lean right into it. And I actually like the direct approach with that instead of trying to justify all the other means to it.
Yeah. Like we just went for it and here it is.
Yeah.
I did also like this kind of like Bond style opening with this of the very kind of psychedelic 1960s, 1970s. Also, I expected all of them to be introduced as their Spice Girl names and then talk to each other using those throughout this. And then once they started like introducing their normal names and discussing each other in their normal names, it threw me because I had just assumed, oh, clearly it's going to be like Emma as Baby Spice and they're going to call her Baby the entire time. It never crossed my mind that that's only for like the stage show and they never actually do that with each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And, while we're on it too, we can just do a quick run through of who the Spice Girls are. Because I think I'll probably refer to them mostly by their names, their real names versus their stage names, but it can be interchangeable. So you mentioned Emma. Emma Bunton is Baby Spice. She's the blonde one with the pigtails and always has like a little lollipop and wears the baby doll dresses. You have Jerry Halliwell, who's Ginger Spice. Very easy to point her out because she's got flaming red hair, and she always is wearing like red. Very famously wears like the Union Jack dress.
Iconic.
That very iconic. And she's almost like the feminist of the group. She's the one that coined girl power, and that's her approach. Then you have Mel B, Melanie Brown, is Scary Spice, and she's always wearing her leopard print. She's got the tongue ring. She's very loud and proud and outgoing, and she's just supposed to be the wild and crazy one of the group. And then you have Mel C. She is Sporty Spice. She was actually my favorite growing up. And Mel C is all about football, basically. It's her favorite thing, and working out and doing acrobatics on stage. And again, she's probably the most vocally talented.
Mel C feels throughout this movie, every time she talks, I think you could easily have just fit into an episode of Dairy Girls and I would not notice.
Yeah. I know. She's got quite the accent. And you know what? It kills me. I forgot to look up where she was born. Corrections department, help me out. Because she definitely has a very unique accent compared to the other girls.
Whiston, Lancashire.
Yeah, no, I couldn't tell you.
England.
It is England. All right.
Yeah, it's in
Just a really
Merseyside.
cool accent. Yeah. And last but not least, we have Posh Spice, played by Victoria Beckham. I think she was Victoria Adams at the time. I think that was her maiden name, but famously married Beckham, David Beckham, and has been known as Victoria Beckham henceforth. So those are the Spice Girls. I don't think I forgot anyone. And again, it was kind of like growing up, you know, everyone had a favorite versus NSYNC or Backstreet Boys. Every girl had a favorite Spice Girl, just like everyone had a favorite Ninja Turtle. Everyone had a favorite Power Ranger.
Where does Ice Spice fit in?
Not until 20 years later.
So wait, is that the equivalent of like when they added Venus into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
She's just, all I know is she's Taylor Swift's friend. I really don't know a whole lot about her. And she's on the song Karma, which I like that song. But yeah, Ice Spice. Yeah, I think Sporty was always my favorite because I remember wanting to wear Adidas, but it was so expensive. I could never have it. I had to wear like Umbro or whatever we got at like Walmart.
Yeah, Scary was my favorite growing up.
Scary was your favorite?
I just like how like multiple times throughout this film, everybody else is interacting and her interaction is just like look at the camera and just do like, ah. It's like, we get it. You're Scary Spice. I love this. Keep going. No notes.
So, Nick, I know you weren't in the demographic growing up, but if you had to pick a favorite after seeing this movie, who would your favorite Spice Girl be?
Oh God.
Richard E. Grant.
Yes. No, actually I really liked the driver, Meatloaf. I would be
Meatloaf
him. Like
Spice.
I can't single them out. You know, I may not be like on the forefront of all of their tours and like on the stage, but I'm in the back waiting for them so I can get them to the next venue. So I will gladly take the role of bus driver for them.
Okay, perfect. Hey, Meatloaf has spice in it too, so perfectly acceptable choice. So we start off at Top of the Pops. We get our introduction of the Spice Girls. We see that there's a lot of lip syncing that's going to happen in this movie. It's not great, but if you know their music, it's
it's a
awesome to
movie.
hear
I
it.
mean, I didn't think of that while watching this at all because
Yeah, what is this, Les Mis?
it's a movie. I know it's their music. It's not like it's a bunch of actresses wondering like, is this real? Like watching like, you know, The Lion King, and it's like that's not really Jonathan Taylor Thomas singing. That's some other kid, you know. Like
Or like
I wasn't
Mulan
wondering
with
that.
Donny Osmond.
Yeah, I wasn't wondering that at any point through this movie because I knew like that they get a buy on that because it's acting skills may not be there, but I know they can definitely crush it when it comes to singing.
Yeah, exactly. So following their show at Top of the Pops, we are led into a hallway where they immediately run into a good friend of theirs, Elton John, and this kicks off one of dozens, it feels like, cameos that happen throughout the
Just
film.
right out of the gate.
And I did right out of the gate, just like kissing Elton John.
Love it.
And then he leaves, and it's like, okay, bye, Elton. And I did see a note when I was doing my research that this was a film where a lot of folks did ask to be in it. And I think, that goes to show how popular they were, especially in England, is everyone wanted to be in the movie. So if you have Elton John, you're already off to a good start and oh, wow, like these girls are kind of a big deal.
Which, plus, from my understanding, they were already friends with Elton John previously from other like projects or other like charity things. So I don't know if that helped get other people as well of, okay, well, like if Elton's on board, then I'll be on board or whatever the case may be.
Right. Totally agree. So then we come across a documentarian and his crew, played by Alan Cumming.
Love him.
His name is Pierce. And I was so surprised to see him. And he's so young in this. And now I know you guys like Josie and the Pussycat. So remind me, wasn't he a record executive?
I forget what his role was. I just remember him as White Ass Wally when he's talking with Parker Posey. Don't you remember me? It's me, Wally. White Ass Wally.
Yeah, he was in that, and it was nice to see him in this. And honestly, seeing him in, like, knowing he was in Josie and the Pussycats, and then seeing him in this, I'm like, yeah, this tracks.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he has a preference of what he likes to be in. So he plays a documentarian named Pierce who has a small crew, a sound guy and a camera guy, and he is really trying to get deep down and just into the depths of the souls of the Spice Girls and wants to try to dig up some kind of meaning beyond all of the bubblegum pop and fun and girl power. So he's trying to make a serious documentary in the 5 days that they're going to be following the Spice Girls around. So we're introduced to him, and then the Spice Girls go flying down the hallway behind him, and they're led out of the Top of the Pops studio by their band manager, Clifford, who is played by Richard Grant, right? Richard E. Grant, who I realize, isn't he the dad in Saltburn?
I believe so, yeah.
He's been in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole movie is filled with people that I'm like, I know them from somewhere. Where have I seen them before? I thought he was great in this. His facial hair was so 90s. The suits he wore, so 90s. He was way over the top. He was like Anxiety Spice the whole time.
I thought like
edge.
Whenever he was making the phone calls back to the boss and whatnot, I thought he was going to be like secretly the villain or double crossing them. And it's like, no, he's a little demanding as a manager to try to keep them on track. But for the most part, it's like he was decent to them.
He was. I think it was just the 90s wardrobe was giving like scary villain.
Oh, you didn't like his sideburns and goatee?
Yeah, I know. It's like a soul patch, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like a soul patch. I had the same thought though too at first when I was watching it, and then also trying to figure out the record executive, if he was good or bad, and I still couldn't tell you.
God, I'm glad I didn't miss too much of the movie, because seeing Roger Moore, I'm like, oh, cool. And then like my notes saying like, it's kind of fun to see him as like the villain. But then I'm like, wait, was he?
I mean, like he pushed them to extremes, but he was never actively like mean or terrible. It was just, no, I will keep you extremely busy all the time, and that's it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I think it was supposed to give I think Roger Moore's character, he was chief, which I think he's supposed to be like the record executive. I think his whole side quest, like his existence, was supposed to be very similar to Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
And like Hugh's Charlie, and then Clifford is like Bosley.
I wonder also if it's a case of, as they were doing this, they wanted to poke fun at the callousness and the extreme nature of record execs placing all of this onto their teams, but they didn't want to push it too far because they also are still under a record label. So it's like,
yeah,
we'll poke fun at this, but we won't end up taking to a point where the record execs themselves will say, yeah, we don't want to do business with you next time.
Right, exactly. Like, wow, you guys just totally shit all over us, like, through this humor, but we're not fans of it. I also, just another quick note about Roger Moore, I love that there was just like CDs taped to his wall, like as art,
properly mounted like normal golden records and stuff, or platinum things.
Yeah. It's just they were like glued to the wall so that you got the nice refraction in the CDs.
I guess he shot all of his cameo like all in one go, all in one day, because he's never with anybody else. It's always he's just on the phone. And it's just talking into the line and scene.
It was probably just one take.
Yeah.
Well, but they did have to switch out the various animals that he held He had like a kitten, a bunny, a piglet. Like he switched it up throughout the course of the movie. So that, but yes, I agree. It had to be a 1-day shoot for him. And that pretty much sums him up. Like his whole involvement in the movie is he was this mysterious record executive and he kind of looked like a Bond villain. There were some Bond jokes made and he was always on the phone with Clifford from the bus. And that brings us to
Clifford from the bus.
Yeah, he would talk to Clifford on the bus, like from, I don't know. So just like in my other favorite movie from the 90s, Twister, how the red truck was a character in Twister, the bus is a character in Spice World.
Absolutely.
Like,
their tour bus is a TARDIS.
Yeah, that's my exact note.
Like, as soon as they walked in, and I was like, oh, I must have missed, like, they must be at wherever their head base is now. And I'm like, wait, no, they're still on the bus, and she's, like, on a swing set, and somebody else is, like, in a different room.
Yeah, exactly. They each have their own themed corners of it's a double-decker London bus. You walk on, there's a door that says capacity 5 girls. And you walk in and all of the Spice Girls have their own specific area to hang out in, and it's all themed to their stage persona. So Sporty Spice has a gym, Baby Spice has like the swing set with the stuffed animals, Posh Spice has a runway with a closet and a chandelier, and so on and so forth. They all had like their own little unique personalities, but you think, oh my God, how is all of this fitting in a bus? Not to mention Clifford's little office that he hung out in that looked like a government office that he kept in contact with Roger Moore from.
The fact that at one point Clifford walks out to like a walkway overlooking where all of them are down in their own separate sections as he's talking to, I think it was Claire, the other person. It's like, wait, so that means you're still in the bus. You're up on the second level in a walkway overlooking the bottom section of this bus.
And they never fell over. There was never any turbulence. There was never any bumping.
No.
So kudos to London for having great roadways because they stayed standing up the whole time. But yeah, the bus really was incredible. And seeing that as a little kid, I mean, it kind of just grabbed you by your imagination, like, you know, and thinking like what a magical place. It's like Mary Poppins' bag, right? Like you can just reach in and pull out something that, like, you know, space and time don't matter. You just go in and it can be this magical place, like whatever you want it to be. So I remember loving the bus as a kid when I saw it in theaters. So the girls, I had to write this down because this jump made like no sense. So after we get introduced to the bus and the girls being on the bus after their show, we suddenly are transported to what I believe is supposed to be Los Angeles. They never specifically say it, but all of a sudden we see Norm from Cheers. And I was thrilled. I literally went, Norm. I saw him. I can't remember the actor's name.
George Wendt.
Thank you, George Wendt. And he is accompanied by the manager from Superstore. He plays Glenn on Superstore. And again, I'm really bad with his name.
Mark McKinney.
Mark McKinney. Thank you. Again, just people I see from all these other shows and movies are in this movie. It's so great.
He's originally from Kids in the Hall.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. He was originally there, but I know him more recently from Superstore. Yeah. He was like the manager, Glenn. But yeah, he's also in Kids in the Hall. So these two gentlemen are in Los Angeles watching TV. Spice Girls are on TV. And I'm just going to call him Norm. I'm sorry, Norm, because again, their characters really don't mean a whole lot to the movie. So I'm just going to call them what I'm going to call them. So Norm points to the TV and says, come in. Like, it's the Spice Girls. Like, shut up. And then I guess they're trying to write a script. And he's like, we need to have a movie with these girls in it. They're the best. They're international. We have to have them. So Glenn, Mark McKinney's character, he starts, I think his name was like Clayton or something in the movie. Again, I apologize for not knowing. He is going to start writing a script and they're going to pitch it to Clifford, to the band manager, so that the Spice Girls can have their own movie.
Well, I love...
And this is when it gets a little meta.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say...
No, you can go ahead.
Oh, I just love how his argument is like, but they can't act. It's like, it doesn't matter if they can act. Marilyn Monroe couldn't act. All it mattered was if she was in frame.
Yeah, exactly. She had to be in focus.
Yeah.
She had to look good, and that was it. And that's all they needed. And yeah, that's when you kind of take on the journey of like, oh, so I think part of this is really real. Like part of this is probably what kind of spurred this idea to make this whole
It
movie.
also shows how Hollywood writes their current movies.
Yeah, exactly. So that scene comes and goes very quickly. And then we jump ahead to a rehearsal for the Spice Girls because they're getting ready to perform at Sir Albert Hall. It's a very famous theater in England, and they are going to be performing their new album, including their new hit, Spice Up Your Life, with a live band. So they're going to be rehearsing with the live band. And while they're practicing, another woman comes into the room named Nicola, and she's very pregnant. And all of the girls get really excited. They put rehearsal to a stop. They put it on hold so they can run over and hug their friend. And it becomes clear that they're all very, very close with her. They sit down with her, and they're like, hey, how are you doing? And she's like, oh, my baby daddy left me, but like he was a loser. So it is what it is. And then they were like, oh, boys suck. And like, you just feel really bad for this friend. And they were like, when were you due? And she said, last week. So apparently, this is a 41-week pregnant woman that is just friends with them and kind of shows up and then leaves. It just kind of establishes that the Spice Girls had relationships outside of the glitz and the glamour. And I think it comes into play later on as being part of like adding to like the soul and the spirit of friendship and loyalty and womanhood and all of that.
Also, I feel like for all the places they're traveling around and going around, she shows up at these locations like 3 more times throughout the film that I'm wondering, what do you do? That it's like, oh, you're here with them. And then later it's like you show up at a club. And then later you show up at some gala. And then later you show up here. And it's like, are you just also following them?
Yeah. Like,
or all of this
why
travel,
are you
is it
here?
just happening in different parts of London and they're not actually leaving the city on this tour?
Not to mention, she's a very pregnant woman going into these spots where I don't think most pregnant women would go to, despite how I'm
No.
sure she's there to obviously support her friends. But I wouldn't want to go
Yeah.
to any of those places, even not pregnant. That's just not my scene. If I was pregnant, hell no.
Yeah. So speaking as someone that's been pregnant, and I only made it to 39 weeks, I would have cut my arm off before going to 41 weeks. Like there is no, by the time you're in those last couple of weeks of pregnancy, you can't sleep. You're never comfortable.
So you're not going to the club and you're not
going to
showing
the
up to
drag
dance
club.
to say you'll be there or any of this.
And drinking a Pepsi, or you get the heartburn you get in your 3rd trimester. Why would you be drinking a Pepsi? Like you're just asking for the burps. It's awful. So yeah, that they're a very pregnant friend. And so she makes a joke during this visit at the rehearsal that triggers what I call the first trip of the movie. So this is the first
These weird cutaways.
yeah. I think vignette is an appropriate word
Yeah.
that was brought up earlier. And she makes a joke, man, wouldn't it be weird if you guys were moms? And then you kind of get the like do 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 do, like the music cuts in and the screen kind of spins out, and it's a vignette of all the Spice Girls basically being haggard moms that are heavier and have gray hair, and I think one of them's smoking a cigarette. Scary Spice is just mixing a bowl. They're like yelling at the kids upstairs for making loud music, and
Yeah, and
that
like
was pretty depressing.
Posh sent her kids off to boarding school.
Yeah,
I think that
so-
happened for real, though, too.
I think it did. Yeah, no, her whole character in this movie, though, like she nailed it. It was so funny. I do think she was my favorite in the movie. So that was our first kind of departure. And then they kind of snap out of it once the band leader is like, hey guys, we have to get back to rehearsal. And then they do a performance of Say You'll Be There, which is my favorite Spice Girl song. And so again, it is almost like a musical movie. Like they perform pretty much all of their hits, including that one. So, and it kind of serves as like a segue into like the next part of the movie. And then, okay, so if you're following along, we already have the documentarian of Alan Cumming and his whole side story. Then we've got the LA guys with Norm and Glenn and like their whole side story. We now introduce a third subplot of the tabloid office. It cuts into a fake tabloid office called The Event, which is clearly a spoof on The Sun and all the other tabloid rags that were. I think they're not as bad now as they were in the 90s. They were really bad in the 90s, and actually part of the reason why I think like Princess Diana was killed was because of paparazzi and like the tabloids
Yep.
trying to get photos and stuff. So
Blanket
this was a
statement,
really
paparazzi
timely-
should be illegal. Like full stop.
Yeah,
Regardless of where,
Yeah.
what, and why, just paparazzi in general should be illegal.
it should be completely illegal. And so it cuts to this tabloid office, and the CEO or editor in chief, rather, his name's Kevin McMaxford, and he has his minion Brad, who's working with him, who I recognize as being the original lead singer of Steel Dragon from the movie Rockstar.
Jason Fleming.
Before Marky Mark took over. I unironically love the movie Rockstar.
We can
I don't know
cover
why.
that at some point. I also know
I love it.
I also know that he was when we talked before about like Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, he was originally in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels too.
Oh, okay.
Or also not two, not
That's
like a,
that's where I know him from.
yeah. Or League of Extraordinary
Gotcha.
Gentlemen. He was Dr. Jekyll,
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
a movie
wow,
that will
okay.
live in infamy.
So in the tabloid office, Kevin says those Spice Girls, like they're on every headline, but it's always the same old, same old. Like, why can't anything interesting happen? Like, we have to get, really juicy dirt on the Spice Girls, basically. Like, that's what he's looking to do. And he starts conspiring with Brad to come up with a way to take them down. And they think that getting the Spice Girls to not show up for this big performance at Albert Hall, and even better for the Spice Girls to get them to break up, that would be the best, like, first page news that they could get. And it would do great things for the tabloids. So they're talking about this plan, and then all of a sudden, for no reason, it starts raining inside the office.
I died at this. This was amazing and some of the best. The icing on the cake for that is Jason Fleming is completely drenched in rain inside an office that's completely sealed, and they make no one mentions it.
The earlier parts were goofy and the cutaways were funny, but this was the point where it caught me off guard of, oh, so we're going to get weird with this movie, and they're just going to play it off as like, just have fun with it. Because the whole thing of the rain and thunder, or the fact that he's like, or if they find a cure for deja vu, well, not me. Or if they find a cure for deja vu, well, not me. And I was like, that's funny.
Yep.
Yeah. But I don't know if there was, I mean, I guess I'm not thinking of it right off the top. Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like this was pure absurdism, like the first, and I wanted to argue that it might be the most absurd part of this movie, but then my mind started to remember other things.
Yeah, there's a couple.
But it really was just, this was just great. So it introduces just this whole other subplot to the movie, where they're going to start going after the Spice Girls.
Which I think there's a lot of working, moving parts going on in the film that I don't think it ever gets chaotic to the point where, like, it's a basic plot, but it gets its point across, even with, like, the documentary crew, but then we have this, but then we have the movie makers, like, trying to pitch the other film. There's a bunch of different pieces, but I think all of them play well together, that at no point was I like, wait a second, now what's going on?
Yeah. I think ultimately in the end too, it's supposed to represent all of the different directions the Spice Girls are getting pulled in by the media and like what's being asked of them. So I did think that was kind of smart in that aspect. Maybe we're giving it too much credit, but really, like, that's why their schedule was so tight, is because of the attention that was being craved and asked of them. So yeah, at first I was like, wow, this is so much. And then it kind of all made sense in the end. So after we get the rainstorm inside the tabloid office, we go back to the LA movie pitch. But the gentlemen have now flown from Los Angeles to London, and they're meeting with Clifford in a cafe, and they start trying to pitch them movie ideas for the Spice Girls. And we get ever so closer to them coming to the conclusion that this movie is meta. It's the movie that they end up pitching. Then we jump again back to the bus where the girls are talking about what they can, like who they are and how they get stereotyped. And we get into our second trip, as I call it. So our second vignette, which I think was a favorite of mine.
Oh, yeah.
The girls are basically talking about how Baby Spice, how Emma can get away with anything. And they just kind of twirl off into a vignette of is it Hercule Poirot? Is that how you say his name? Like the character Poirot?
Oh, what the mustachioed detective character?
Detective. Yeah, he's credited. This is Hugh Laurie.
Oh, he's actually credited as Hercule?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That is Hugh Laurie. Holy shit, I didn't even recognize him with the makeup and everything. And well, it's also tougher too because the camera is intentionally skewed. They use a weird lens for this, so it makes it look like it's a hallucination kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, all of these side skits make more sense when we talked about the fact that it's like the writers and directors involved. They already did a bit of Fry and Laurie, where that's kind of the bread and butter of all of these like weird little side skits.
Yeah.
So this was normal for him, but I loved this.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So Hugh Laurie, dressed up as Hercule Poirot, the famous detective, is trying to determine who murdered a bunch of people with machine gun bullets, and goes through a list of like a monk and a doctor and a professor and an old lady. And then you have Baby Spice that's basically geared up like Rambo with all of these guns and bullets and ammunition. And all she does is smile at him, and he switches at the last second and blames it on the priest. And it's just indicating that she can get away with anything she wants with a smile. And then they went into this really interesting chat about how they were all being stereotyped by their stage personas and just being very tongue-in-cheek about it and making fun of it. And then they go off to a photo shoot that also had an actor from Rockstar.
Dominic West.
Yeah, Dominic West. I know he was also in The Wire, but again, I loved Rockstar. So Dominic West was the photographer, and the girls say, you know what, I'm sick of being labeled in my same persona. Like, let's have fun with it. And they go into this whole photo shoot montage where they try on different costumes. They're having a lot of fun with it. We see characters like from Grease, Barbarella, Charlie's Angels, Jackie O, Marilyn Monroe. Jerry, or Ginger Spice, did Marilyn Monroe. She looked awesome. I thought like she really nailed it.
She also did Wonder Woman. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Wonder Woman was great. And then I thought Emma, Baby Spice as Twiggy was like spot on. It's crazy how much she looked like Twiggy. And then they dressed up as each other. They were spoofing each other's stage presences. So I thought that was like a really cute and fun little montage for them to do to kind of make fun again of like all these labels that have been put on.
I also liked all the fake new Spice names that they ran through that they wanted to switch over to.
Can you remind me of some of them?
She was like, I think I'll be Bricklayer Spice. And then Sporty's like, I'll be Sporty, but I'm interested in other things too, Spice.
See, I love that they were like just having fun with it and making like, because it definitely was, they were always over the top with like how on brand they had to be for that stage presence. So I imagine it had to be fun for them as women to like kind of pull that apart and make fun of it.
Also, the thing that always confused me is the fact that it's like, okay, so Posh Spice is the fashion, like high society one, and then Baby Spice is like the young, innocent one, and Sporty, and then it's like, so what, is Scary just scary? Because I don't think that's really like a personality point for her. And then Ginger is what, just
redheaded?
Yeah, red. It's like we ran out of like descriptors, so it's just and Scary and Ginger and done. That's lunch.
I feel like Scary Spice didn't have to be scary. I felt like that could have been like Wild Spice. I don't know. Scary is like,
maybe it's because she always did like the cat claw and the like rah noise.
She just could be like Wild Spice.
Yeah.
It was like Wild and Crazy Spice.
Tiger Spice.
So following the photo shoot, we go back to the tabloid office and they are discussing that they found the best paparazzo, so the actual photographer in the business. And he's so good. He even caught the Teletubbies taking a poop. That was like one of his credits, which I thought was really weird. And this guy like kind of shows up out of nowhere. He's very creepy looking. He reminds me of the gentleman from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like that is trying to get Charlie to
was it Slughorn?
Slugworth. Is it Slugworth?
I think it's Slugworth or Slughorn or something.
Slugworth.
Yeah, so like
Slugworth.
Slugworth. Yeah, so he looks like Slugworth, but he's paparazzi, and they're hiring him basically to get all of the worst dirt on the Spice Girls to take them down.
I love that, like, well, who will we get? And he's like, well, I have the best. And he just walks out of the shadows and he's throwing the photos down of the editor. And he's like, here was you yesterday. Here was you on the car. And then the last one that he just throws down, they don't mention. He's like, and here's like you ordering ice cream. You were 12. And it goes on to the next thing. But then he just disappears. It's so anybody who knows Rocky Horror Picture Show, this was Richard O'Brien who wrote that show and then also was one of the leads in that. So it's funny just seeing him pop up again in this in such a non-serious role.
That's so great. Yeah, he's hired by them to basically stalk the Spice Girls and get as many controversial photos of them as possible. So next we hop over to a publicity party where there's like a bunch of cameos in here, probably a bunch that I missed, where it's a bunch of socialites in London's elite they just want to meet and greet with the Spice Girls. And I know at least one famous person that I recognized was Bob Geldof, who was there. And there's also someone there named Barnaby, which I was really happy about because Dean and I have a dog named Barnaby. It's not a name you hear very often.
The woman that she's talking to about, like, do you know anything about manta rays? Oh, yes, I love that designer. I have their glasses. That is one of the women from Absolutely Fabulous.
Thank you. I thought so. Yes, I thought so. And I tried looking her up and I couldn't confirm it, but I thought I recognized her from AbFab. So they're all schmoozing with these folks, and then their pregnant friend Nicola shows up to the party. She has an invite.
At a lot of time.
And she asks the girls if they would all be godmothers to her unborn baby. And then pretty much feels bad about herself and leaves like immediately after. So that was kind of a weird, I don't really know what we were supposed to learn from that. But all the girls got pulled away to like take a photo, and then Nicola's kind of left in the dust, and she's like, I'm a nobody. Barnaby, of course, went up to her and said, who are you? And she's like, I'm nobody. And then she's sad and like walks away. So that made me feel sad for no reason. And then at the end of the party, you see the scary paparazzi guy, Slugworth. He appears up out of a food platter, like completely hidden and disguised, and catches Jerry saying, is the Pope Catholic? on camera. And it becomes tabloid headlines of the Spice Girls questioning whether or not the Pope is Catholic, when really it was just in response to the question, do you like boys? So I thought that was kind of fun.
The thing that kills me the most, especially with that, is the amount of times they try to get you, like, you know, like it's just the constant like gotcha clips where even today news sources will take shit out of context just so that they can spin it like that. I never like that. That crossed me real something fierce when they pulled that. I mean, the skit was funny. I get it. It's a movie, but the fact that that's still so heavily prevalent even today in serious matters always kills me. Like, I just don't get it.
Clickbait.
Yeah.
Also, I'm curious because I thought he was carrying like a film photo camera. So I don't know how he can take a picture and then like slap it in the proper, or like the newspaper of, we caught her. You caught her saying this?
Right. Unless he had like a tape recorder too. He might have, because I think in another scene, I think he had like a tape recorder, but I don't know if it was that one. So, but yeah, that I just thought that was funny though, because the saying like is the Pope Catholic, and then there was another scene of like the news showing an angry cardinal or somebody, and that's probably another famous British actor. I don't know who it is, but
That was actually
just
the
funny kind of
Archbishop
showing.
of the Vatican. He was
Oh,
free. They
okay.
asked, and he said,
He was
"My kids are going to
Is
love
the
an
Pope
autograph."
Catholic?
a real get.
He wasn't very busy at
Their
the end of the
agent,
90s.
their casting agent was really working overtime. So then all of a sudden, do we're suddenly going to Italy for a performance, and they're in Milan performing a song that was actually, and I had to do some research on this. This is actually pretty
Yeah.
scandalous. Yeah. So the song is like I'm the leader. I
Yeah,
think
it's like leader
called.
of the gang.
Leader of the gang. And it was originally a song by a performer called Gary Glitter, who is a famous British glam rock artist.
Who did a lot of great songs if you don't Google anything farther.
And that's what I did, unfortunately. I learned. So it turns out, here's the story. Gary Glitter was actually in the movie and was in this scene with them. However, shortly before they wrapped editing on the movie, they cut out his scenes because he was arrested on child pornography charges.
Nice.
So, yeah. So he was completely wiped out, but they left the scene in with the song, which was kind of, it sucks that, like, because the song was a bop. So it's really unfortunate that he had anything to do with it.
Luckily, I mean, at least it still makes sense within the film that it's not like, well, now this scene makes no sense. It's like, okay, so it could just be a song they're working on.
Yeah.
It still works.
So in this performance of the leader song, they have male dancers that randomly come out during rehearsal, and the girls get all upset because these male dancers are dressed up like scantily clad seamen, I guess.
Yeah,
for lack of a
sailors.
better term. They're like sailors. And it really like bothers the girls, and it also bothers Clifford. So he starts arguing with the Italian director, and he's like, these dancers are great. And Clifford's like, we don't want them. Like, and they start to devolve into a fight where they're going to threaten to kill each other. And then Jerry breaks them up and said, have you ever heard of the word compromisation? And she wants them to compromise. So it jumps ahead to the performance in Italy, and the dancers come out and they're not as scantily clad in the front. And then they turn around. Mind you, imagine being my dad, like with little 8-year-old Laura in the theater. And then all of a sudden, these male dancers turn around and they're all wearing assless chaps
In a PG film.
and dancing.
He
It's
leans over
G-rated.
and
It's
is like hiding
PG.
your eyes.
Pretty much. So there's a bunch of male dancers wearing assless chaps.
I did love the sequence of Emma explaining to one of the shirtless sailors on how, like, I can't take you home. I don't have room. With all of my stuffed animals, I can't fit you anywhere.
And she mentions like Woody and Buzz
Yeah.
and the alien. She's like, I don't have room for you. I'm sorry. And then I like how she accidentally touches him like out of a sign of kindness, and then like grabs her hand because it's covered in body oil and she's like grossed out. So no, it was a funny, again, just another funny little detour that the girls took. So following the trip to Milan, they fly back to London late at night, and they're driving in the middle of the night. And of course, Meatloaf is their bus driver. And he drops the I won't do that line, like the I would do anything for love, but I won't do that, when Clifford asks him, can you fix the toilets that are broken? So we learn that the toilets in the bus are broken, and suddenly all of the girls really have to go use the bathroom. So he has to pull over into the woods, the middle of the woods at night. And the girls all get off the bus with like 3-foot long mag lights. Like those mag lights did not mess around. They were like baseball.
Their
bat
outfits
size
all
mag lights.
randomized, but giant mag lights.
It's like huge. Like you could kill someone with those. And they start wandering in the woods at night, and it's very scary. And suddenly, a UFO appears. Yes, this is the same movie. And the UFO comes down and it lands, and a bunch of aliens come out, and they're all very silly looking. And They ask for autographs, and suddenly the Spice Girls know how to speak their language.
I was wondering that. Because all of a sudden, like, I'm reading subtitles, but then I'm like, wait a second, but they're not seeing subtitles.
And then the alien asks for the autograph to be made out to his brother. And they're like, what's your brother's name? And he's like, blah, 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 blah. And then Sporty Spice is like, is that with 1K or 2?
This movie is
It's
unhinged.
just so weird. And the aliens were terrifying looking. They had very little heads.
Yeah.
And they looked like shrunken heads.
They like ask for tickets and they're like, we're so sorry. It's sold out.
Yeah.
It was nice to
very
see how
strange.
much they were fangirling. I mean, it just goes to show you that the Spice Girls it's beyond international. They are universal.
They're intergalactic for sure.
That's the Beastie Boys. No, that's the wrong.
Oh, damn it. Sorry. Now that song's gonna be stuck in my head. So following the night with the aliens, the girls ask for a morning off, and Clifford is dead set that he's gonna get the morning off for them. They need a break. But he gets on the phone with Chief, Roger Moore, who is basically rambling off a bunch of adages that don't make any sense and saying, like, you can't let them have the morning off. So they have to keep working. We're going to work them down to the bone.
I like that he was talking to the other girl about like, okay, fine, we'll give them like tomorrow off. I'll make the call. And then Roger Moore calls first and he picks up the phone. He's just like, no.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, it was like he was anticipating it. Also, I feel like we haven't really talked about the girl at all yet, and I don't really think we have to too much until later. But she's basically Clifford's other band manager assistant that's with him at all times and with the girls. And she's like I think she's supposed to play like the straight man, right?
Yeah.
I think her name's Claire, and she's just like the other assistant. She's like the only normal person there, just to make reference to who that was. So Clifford delivers the bad news that they're not getting the morning off, and the girls act really pissed off at him at first, but then turn around and say, oh, that's okay. We know you tried. Like, we're just going to keep working. And Clifford says, okay, well, now you have to go to dance camp. And then this starts a whole like military type.
Yeah, like the others
situation.
were like fun weird, and then it got to this one. I'm like, oh, this is just weird.
And it was military dance camp at a haunted mansion, basically. And there's this guy dressed up in like a general outfit, like a general military outfit, trying to teach them how to dance. He can't dance. I think the actor's name, he is a Barrymore, but I don't know if he had any relation to Drew's family.
Unsure. But yeah, it's Michael Barrymore.
Yeah. So he is teaching them how to dance and then makes them do, what's it called? Like not a physical fitness test, but they have to go through they go through an obstacle course.
Oh, okay, I was going to say the physical aptitude test.
Yeah, I know. So they have to go through an obstacle course. And so all of a sudden it cuts to all the girls in these military garb, except for Posh Spice, who of course is wearing a camo mini Prada Gucci dress, whatever, and stilettos. And what I really loved about it is that the camera kind of follows along with the girls as they're running through this obstacle course, and Posh Spice just keeps walking. She just completely avoids all of the obstacles and just has to keep pulling her dress down because her butt's about to fall out. And it's just very, again, like one of my favorite moments for Posh Spice for Victoria, because she's hilarious. Just like, no, like, screw you guys, I'm not doing that. And they end up chasing the dance coach away like he's crazy, and that ends dance camp in the military. But they end up spending the night at this beautiful manor, like this mansion that the dance camp was being held at. And then we get into like this haunted mansion type theme of like it's nighttime and there's creepy noises and music, and the girls are trying to sleep, and then all of a sudden they hear a creaking noise, and while it's just the paparazzi guy sneaking up through a toilet.
I don't know.
I love that.
What kind of Santa Claus technology he has going on.
When he was introduced, though, that had me in stitches because it's just like, how do we know you're any good? It's like, here's you picking your nose in the elevator on the way in. And then here's this. And here's a photo of you when you were 12 during that embarrassing thing that happened to you when you were younger. He's like, oh, this guy's good. We should. And then they look over and he's just like, he vanishes.
Yeah. And then he comes up out of the toilet.
Yeah, like the
in the mansion.
Fucking ring girl.
Yeah. Oh my God, I forgot about
Sadako?
that. She crawls out of the toilet?
She does not.
It's just the unnerving way that he came out of the toilet.
Oh, it's like, but it's like how she crawls out of the TV. That's how he crawls
actually,
out of the toilet.
I mean, what if you were to wait until that point and then put your TV face down over the toilet?
Yeah. Like Portal.
Yeah.
But it's like, here you go, you're in a toilet now. So all the girls end up huddling together because they're scared. And they're like, we need each other. We're best friends. And it kind of brings them closer together. So it kind of like works in the opposite way that the paparazzi wants. So after all of that, we go back to the LA movie producers pitching the movie. And this is another little departure where we get the Spice Force 5 movie pitch.
I would watch it.
Yeah, I would too, honestly. And all of the different Spice Girls have different specialties. Like I think Baby Spice was Kung Fu Master, and Scary Spice was a bomb expert. Sporty Spice was espionage, doing like the Mission Impossible, like rappelling down on the bungee line. Posh just made cat noises.
And Posh was, it was like Posh. He was just like, and Posh. And then it's just her standing there in leather and he's just, And
she's like purring. Yeah. And then last but not least, I left this for last because Jerry was the master of disguise. Ginger Spice was master of disguise. And this is when she runs into a British telephone box, like one of the classic red telephone booths, and transforms into Bob Hoskins, who comes out of the telephone booth and with Jerry's voice says, yeah, girl power, and then like runs away. So Bob Hoskins makes an appearance.
Love Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, it was pretty classic. And Clifford shoots down that movie idea, which I'm very disappointed in. That should have been the sequel, but it's fine.
We can kickstart it.
We'll do Kickstarter. Yeah, with them. They're all in their 50s now. God love them. That'd be great. So the next adventure we go on with the Spice Girls is 2 kids win a contest to go onto the bus and travel around London with them for the day. However, the Spice Girls decide that they're really bored and they hate being stuck on the bus. So they want to escape and take the kids with them. So, good old fashioned kidnapping. And they stop the bus, jump off, and find a nearby boat being captained by a very blonde gentleman. And they jump into the boat and take off with the kids. And the documentarian and his crew follow them in another boat. And basically it starts a boat chase. And at one point, the boat driver isn't paying attention. A log pops up. He swerves to avoid it. And both of the children, as well as Posh Spice, fall out of the boat into the River Thames. Blood everywhere.
At least it's not the Seine.
That's true. It was the Thames, not the Seine, correct. And yeah, so they fell into the river, and Sporty Spice was the only one that cared and jumped in after them to save them. And she got to them. They all got rescued, and the kids said, hey, this was great. Let's do it again. But of course, this was really, really bad publicity because Slugsworth was, of course, underwater with an underwater camera and got everything on film. And it was just another bad tabloid moment.
I like they're running away and doing this boat chase and all of this. And then also I realize it's Claire is the real name of the woman. It's Deborah is the other assistant. But Deborah explains to him, like, they're being spontaneous. If they want to be spontaneous, they should clear it with me first.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's what happened. So again, it's feeding into this theme of like they're being overworked, too much is being asked for them, and they're being driven to a point of like madness because they can't they don't have the freedom to do anything that they want to do at this point. So this all culminates into a fight later on that day at their rehearsal at the Albert Hall Theater with Clifford, where Clifford starts yelling at them, and they all freak out on him and say, you know what, maybe we won't even show up for the show. And they storm off, and Clifford fears that he's broken up the Spice Girls.
Contracts be damned. They're not going to the concert.
Exactly. So it shows the girls in their homes later on that evening, starting off with Ginger Spice watching a movie, and suddenly we just go into a flashback. And the movie goes back and forth between the girls in present day, like thinking about the past, and then going back to this flashback of the past, where they're all at an old diner in London with their friend Nicola, the one that's pregnant. So this is back in the day before she was pregnant, and they're all dressed up.
Or that must mean it's within 41 weeks if she is still pregnant.
Or 41 weeks ago.
Remember back when we became the Spice Girls less than a year ago?
Exactly. So apparently it's all before they were super famous and signed to their record label. They're in this diner, and they say to the owner, like, hey, can we pay you with an IOU of like when we're big and famous someday? And he says, ha ha ha, like that's not a thing, like you have to really pay me. And they don't. And then they continue to start singing Wannabe. So this is kind of prefacing like them about to hit it big, and they perform somewhat of like an acoustic version of Wannabe.
I would have accepted it as a form of payment. We do. It's we accept Venmo, PayPal, or acoustic renditions of Wannabe.
Exactly. And that's it. However, it seems like he also accepted it as payment because the cafe was shut down in present day when all of the girls returned.
He accepted a songwriter credit, so he closed the shop because he's now getting bank.
He lives in somewhere in Nice, maybe, like on the Amalfi
He has his own
Coast
apartment in that tour bus.
I just haven't seen it yet. So after having the flashback of the performance of Wannabe, all of the girls find themselves meeting up together in front of the closed down restaurant, just reminiscing about their time before they were famous and why they became friends in the first place. And they called up their friend Nicola saying like, hey, we miss you. Let's just go out and have fun. You know, you're 41 weeks and 5 days pregnant. Like, let's go to the club. And they do. So they go to the club. And this is when we get into the Chapel Roan version of the movie. It's just perfection. This club, I want to go to this club. Like, it looked amazing. It looked so fun. 90s clubbing was no joke.
One quick thing before we move past that. So after they have the flashback, we get the daydream of the Stephen Fry as the judge sequence.
Oh, I missed that one completely.
Because then after that dream sequence, then they end up calling her and going to the club.
Why was Stephen Fry the judge again? I don't even remember now.
It was just they had a dream sequence about like what would happen to them if they didn't continue their fame and ended up not doing as well as they started off on. And they just dreamed that Stephen Fry, the judge, would just be, what was it? You've been charged with releasing a single that is by no means as kicking as your previous records, nor does it have such a dirty fat bass line. You're sentenced to having your next record enter the charts at 179 and having it fall completely out the following week.
I remember seeing that yesterday, and I don't remember seeing that today. What is this movie?
What if it's sequences that only appear during like odd viewings, even viewings?
It was incredible, and now I'm sad that I accidentally skipped that. But yeah, Stephen Fry does make the appearance as the judge. I remember that from yesterday's viewing. So while the girls go to the club, then the managers, so Deborah and Clifford, go to a bar. Well, they're at a bar. So Clifford's already been at this bar drinking since like the second the Spice Girls broke up in front of him on the stage. But Deborah joins him, and randomly the bartender shows up in the shot, and it's Elvis Costello.
I didn't realize that's Elvis Costello.
Because why not? So Elvis Costello is their bartender, and they basically decide that they're going to hook up. They're going to get really drunk, and they're going to hook up. even though they have like zero sexual chemistry whatsoever. They just say, hey, let's do it. So that was that scene.
So that scene happened, and then it went to the next one. I mean, I guess it's like going back to towards the beginning of the movie, how they were talking about how, oh, like she's broken up from her boyfriend or something like that, and he's so tense, he just needs to find a good woman. Like, we should set them up, and then they have no impact on the rest of this. That just happens.
Right. Exactly. So they end up hooking up, as at least it's inferred. We don't actually see it happen, but
It'd be weird if we did.
It's implied. Yeah, it would not be PG.
Just in the middle of this, 20 minutes from the end, we just have a hardcore sequence, and then it goes back to, and now back at the club.
So, back at the club.
Spice up your life.
They're playing Who Do You Think You Are, which I love that song. It's, again, just another fire jam from Spice Girls. I still think their music holds up, and nobody can convince me otherwise. And that's probably why I have now officially watched this movie 3
The only
times.
problem is I can't hear Who Do You Think You Are without following up with I Am after all of the, what was that bowling meme from years ago? Who do you think you are? I am.
I am. That was a great meme. I love that. So while they're at the club, they realize that Nicola has gone into labor, and everything that happens in this labor, just forewarning, is nothing like real labor. So just gonna put that out there. It's very different. So Nicola goes into labor, so they take her to the hospital. And this is when we get into a scene that I actually remembered right when it started. I remembered what was going to happen because it was such an absurd scene. And it's while Nicola is going through labor, some of the girls are down in the lobby of the hospital, and this kid's parents come up to them. And I believe it's Jerry, Baby, and Posh.
Yeah.
And say, hey, like our son, he hit his head and he's unconscious, like, but we know he would love to meet
Oh, he just hit his head. I thought this kid had been in a coma for a while. I thought the stakes were much higher.
Well, he wasn't like hooked up to
yeah,
a
they're
machine
like,
or anything, but he was
we're
like,
going to pull the plug. The doctors say there's no way out.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that high, but still, like, if you're unconscious and you're at a hospital, I feel like you should be hooked up to some form of oxygen or some form of machine. And this kid was just like passed out asleep on
Rather than the doctor just kind of walking by and being like, we need to get some help. Not me, but someone.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought the parents were just trying to pull like the kid from the Sandlot. It's like, oh, our boy's just kid's just been dying to get like action with the Spice Girls. Like our boy's been he's unconscious over there. Can you guys do something? Work your magic? And I was waiting for him to like, crack his eyes open, look at the camera, wink when the girls are not paying attention.
Yeah, which we almost get. Like, we get very close to that.
Well,
because then they make a joke.
I was going to say, I like they introduce themselves and they're like, just talk to him. And it's like, oh, I'm Jerry. And it's like, oh, I'm Emma. And she's, and I'm Victoria Malcolm.
Just like yelling it at his name. Yeah, just like yelling it right in his face. And then they're like, well, but you don't have to yell. And then Victoria's like, well, what am I supposed to say to him? Why don't you take off your top, Jerry? They're like, well, that wouldn't help because he doesn't even have his eyes open. And then suddenly the kid's eyes just spring open, like ready. And the parents are like, oh, it's a miracle. And then there was also like a second of time where they showed the kid's dad.
He's like kind of like, it could work. Anything for our son.
Yeah. Once again, saw this movie when I was 8, feeling really good about it.
Well, I mean, the joke that we ended up like that they blew through was when they're helping with the pregnancy on the way to the hospital, and then Jerry is like, oh, I've read a book on pregnancies. I can help. Step 1, you need to put your legs together. And they're like, yeah, a little late for that. She needed that 9 months ago.
Oh, God.
Right. And they all have like the kitchen gloves on, which I think is so funny. Like the rubber kitchen gloves to like help catch the baby. And they're like, well, she's not going to have anywhere to go. She's still wearing her tights. So, which I don't think that's how that works, but it's fine. So Nicola continues to be in labor, and it turns out to be a 12-hour labor. And right towards the end, they realize that it's getting close to showtime. And actually, when the nurses do the shift change, they say, the nurse that's leaving is like, oh yeah, I'm going to the Spice Girls concert. Hope to see you guys there. And then like leaves. Like you realize they're right in front of you, but okay, fine. So she's like going to go to the show. And no sooner than like 5 minutes after that nurse leaves, they say, okay, it's time to push. And she pushes and out pops the baby. And Jerry welcomes the baby by saying, wow, that is girl power. Which is just, I made a joke
Accurate.
to Dean that I kind of wish, I wish I saw this before I gave birth and then had like, and Dean said that to me like right after, although I joke about that now, I probably would have hated it in the moment, but it was just so cheesy and hilarious. And the baby is completely clean. They show the baby as soon as it comes out. It was freshly bathed. Absolutely no signs of birth.
They never show that though in movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that the chest bursting scene in Alien is more accurate to childbirth than this childbirth scene was. I think that's a fair statement.
Because I mean, in the funnier thing though is in every single movie, TV show, whenever you see a newborn infant, and I mean minutes old, the kid's at least like 6 to 8 months old. It's never an infant.
Never knew.
Yeah, they lay it down and he walks out.
Yeah, just like. Because I made the joke to Dean, and my friend was with us when we were watching it, and I was like, why didn't you say that to me? And my friend was like, you were too busy bleeding out, which is like, that's kind of true. So it's like, okay, yeah, real childbirth isn't really captured here. It's very movie, like very much like a movie situation.
Well, I'm glad that didn't happen to Nicola in this, because that would have been a dark back half to this film.
But there like wasn't a doctor though. It was literally just the nurse that delivered her, which is fine too. But again, like it was just, yeah.
Now that's girl power. She's coding.
It's like, she's bleeding out. What do we do? Yeah. So real birth was nothing like that. But it's, you know what, girl power. So they had of course, Nicola has a little girl, and then she tells her daughter's 5 godmothers that they all need to leave so they can go to the show and get there on time.
Oh my God, wait. A sequel to Spice World. Can we come back with them 50, but now the child is grown up and needs to call on all of her godmothers for help? And it's all of the Spice Girls get back together to come help this kid?
I will write a check for that right now.
I don't even want to sell that idea. Just somebody just take it. Make a movie. I'll see it.
I need it. I need it in my life. That would be amazing. So after that, they run into the paparazzi guy at the hospital when they're trying to run back to the bus to get to the show. And we immediately cut over to the Hollywood guys talking to Clifford, saying that he's telling the story. So the Hollywood, what's his name again? Not Glenn, the actor.
George Wendt?
No, Mike.
Oh, yeah, the writer Dayton. But yeah, it's...
Dayton. Yeah. Dayton. So he starts telling the movie word for word. So now we're all caught up, and this has officially become meta. So he's telling the story of the movie from that point forward. And they say that the paparazzi has a crisis, basically of faith, realizing that there's so much more to life than after like seeing the girls witness the birth of Nicola's daughter, that there's like so much more to life than just taking scummy photos of people, and he's a changed man. And Clifford responds to Dayton, the Hollywood writer, saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how can you be so sure? And he's like, well, that's just the rules. And he starts talking about the rules of Hollywood. And they're like, and now they have to get into a chase to get back to the show on time. And that's when they literally run out to the bus. Meatloaf is nowhere to be found. So Posh Spice takes over, and she starts driving the bus to the concert so they can get back on time. And then Meatloaf is sad because he was left behind at the hospital. I had to read my notes. As they're racing through the streets of London, various little obstacles get in the way, like a tiny car full of nuns. And the Spice Girls are randomly on top of the bus at one point, kind of falling over. And then Dayton, the writer, says, oh, and of course there's a bomb on the bus, which I think is kind of a wink and a nod at Speed. because he said that's the rule. There always has to be a bomb on the
Always.
bus. But then I think Clifford says, no, that's too dark. And he's like, okay, fine, never mind. So then they show the girls shutting the door on the bomb and just forgetting about it and moving on. Then they pull up to Royal Albert Hall and the Rocky music starts playing and they run up these steps to get to the show on time. They are stopped by the cops and interrogated and being told, like, you just did a whole bunch of illegal shit. Like, what were you thinking? And Baby Spice just smiles at him and then they get away with it.
So just to rewind real quick, I think the greatest shot in all of cinematic history is when they're in the high speed, bus and they're racing down and, the people are like, oh, we got to raise the bridge, we got to cut off the Spice Girls before they can get to their destination. And like, we got to raise the bridge. And it cuts from them driving in real life to like the most horribly shot 8th grade level like diorama, and then you just see the bus jump the bridge in that quick little thing, and they just completely avoided doing it like for real, and they just did it like that. I love that. That was
like he's explaining like, and then a 4-ton London bus flies through the air, and he's like, it's incredible. And George Wendt is like, it's expensive, and it cuts to that scene, and then cuts back. They're like, okay.
We got through it. It's like popsicle sticks.
I love
basically.
that. That's just as good as in the beginning with the rain. It's just the fact that they did that so nonchalantly. Love it.
Yeah.
Again, it just goes to show like how tongue-in-cheek they were with all of it. It just made it very fun to watch.
Which I would love to see them do a sequel and do it in this vein of like a fun, non-serious, oddly surreal 90s throwback.
Yeah.
Get all the cameos of everybody that still loves the Spice Girls over the years. But the guy who's the cop, Kevin McNally, he looked familiar, but I recognized him with a like mutton chops more because he's Jack's right-hand man in Pirates of the Caribbean. He's his first mate.
Oh.
Mr. Gibbs?
Oh.
I think that's his name.
That's his name, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew I recognized him.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
So young in this.
That
I was going to say, I'm like, now I know
Oh.
2 things he was in. Pirates and Spice World.
Well, while this is happening and they're talking to the police officer, we are brought back to the dressing room where Clifford's having a full-on meltdown and Alan Cumming, Pierce, the documentarian, is like eating it up because he's like, we're really going to get a good like ending to this movie because
It's so
Clifford,
dark.
this is so dark. And this is one of those things that like really caught me off guard. But Clifford says this is what's going to happen because he doesn't know the girls are making it back in time. So he's like, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have the band start and the music's going to get going. I'm going to walk out into center stage and I'm going to hang myself. And he holds up a noose. And Alan Cumming is like, this is good. Like, this is going to be a great documentary. And as soon
The
as
Star is Born ending. Let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. And as soon as he holds up the noose, the girls bust into the dressing room and they say, Clifford, hi. And he's like, oh, girls, I love you. I love you. And everything is fixed and suicide averted. But it was just really, really fucking dark. And then they break out into the final musical number of the night.
The best one.
The best one. So this is when Spice Up Your Life was their big hit. That was their big single coming out of this movie, and they perform it. And it's such a good song. So at the end of the day, the performance goes really well. It's watched by millions of countries around the world. That was a previous quote from the movie. They said that this concert was going to be aired to millions of countries. And all of the fans are happy and the day is saved. At the end of the movie, the credits start rolling and we get some like post-credits scenes. And I think the actors are like playing themselves now. I
thought it was then like it was, oh, we're actually having the Spice Girls interact with the people playing the actors, which works on some of them, but then others, they're still their in-universe character talking about like, oh, like they asked me to stay on and play as like their manager or something like that. but then they'll go talk with Deborah and say, oh, we wanted to get like a really famous dramatic actress to play this role, and I think you're perfect for it. So it's like it's back and forth that it's just all over the place, and I still loved it. Like it's a great meta outro for this.
Yeah. And is Alan Cumming really is he really Scottish?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know that. That was great. His accent's great.
Side note about him, he's currently doing the Netflix show, I think it's Netflix or Hulu, The Traitors, and it's just like
Peacock.
It's just like trash reality kind of show. He is the best part of the entire thing because it's like Big Brother, Survivor, all those kinds of like elimination type shows. He is in his element the entire time, and he's done 2 seasons of it, and I hope he continues on because I've
heard good things about that show because of him.
he is amazing in it.
Yeah.
And it's set in like Scotland Castle, so it's he fits right in.
And then go back and watch Spy Kids with him as, I think, Floop.
And then watch X-Men 2 because he was Nightcrawler.
And then go watch the Broadway appearance of Cabaret where he's the MC.
But completely skip the mask to Son of the Mask.
But we'll also just bring it back to Josie and the Pussycats.
As White-Ass Wally.
So the very last thing to happen is Mel C breaks the fourth wall, and the Spice Girls all get together and start talking to the audience through the movie theater. And I remember seeing this as a kid and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. And they're cracking jokes like, look at you with, snogging in the back row, and you're spilling your popcorn. Stop spilling your popcorn. Oh, I like your dress. And then Ginger Spice says, Ginger Spice says, oh, well, I bet we all know what you're wondering right now. What happened to the bomb on the bus? And then you hear an explosion that the bomb finally went off. It was Chekhov's bomb, and it explodes, and then the movie ends.
And Meatloaf was still on it.
He slid out of that bus like a bat out of hell, I guess. I don't know.
Oh.
He's up there in paradise by the dashboard lights now.
So that, gentlemen, is Spice World. I hope you feel like your lives have been spiced up.
I absolutely love it. I'm very happy. I've been checking to see, like, was there ever talk about a sequel? And I guess there was for the 25th anniversary or something. That it came back up of, oh, should there be a sequel? Maybe we're talking about a sequel, but I guess an interview with Victoria Beckham, she confirmed, like, if there is, I've never heard anything about this. So I guess it's a no-go.
But they did recently show footage from Victoria's 50th birthday party, and all the girls were there, and they did all the choreography from Say You'll Be There, which was like a great music video. And but Victoria had a foot injury, so she was on David Beckham's back, and like doing the choreography with the other girls.
like Master Blaster from Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah, it was so precious because it's like all these years later, like despite having the breakups and everything and getting back together, breaking up again, getting back together, they all still seem to be like in each other's lives to a certain degree in like an amicable way.
Also, wasn't it that Mel B got injured a few years back and all of them like came back together to go visit? Because I remember there was some issue where like she got injured pretty badly.
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to check up on that. I'm not sure. I don't know why I hadn't heard. I know that she had all that drama with Eddie Murphy, but I didn't know about any injuries.
I haven't heard anything. I am very far removed from that circle. I apologize for.
No, that's fine.
Back in 2018, she evidently took like a bad stumble down like a flight of stairs or something like that, and she ended up with her right hand was almost severed, and she had 2 broken ribs.
My God. And they all got together to support her?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. See? Girl power. That's what I call girl power. So
that's it.
I'm done. Well, I really want to thank you guys for finally, this is my birthday present. I really appreciate it because I know I've been talking about doing this for years. And again, this really was my childhood. This and like we already did Power Rangers, but that was it. I think that this probably answers a lot of questions that you might have had about why I am the way I am. Because this is it. It's
The last time
Spice
the last time
World.
I saw you, all the impromptu dance numbers make a lot more sense now.
Exactly. You have my lore. You finally have Laura's lore. No, I'm just really glad we did this, and thanks again, guys.
Anytime.
So
Of course.
with that, we can't thank you enough for coming along for this revisit of Spice World. I know everyone always says this, but likes and subscribing really helps the channel out. If you like what you've heard, please drop a review/rating and subscribe to us on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts to help us out. You can still find us on Instagram at Screen Refresh. Smash that like and subscribe button on YouTube at the Screen Refresh Network, or shoot us an email at screenrefresh@gmail.com so we can hear what your top 3 choices would be or suggest other topics to make episodes on. So for Tim, David, and Dean, this is Laura. Okay, we can edit that part.
Sorry, guys, she's not off book yet.
She's not.
Sorry. So for Tim, David, Dean, and Nick, this is Laura. You take care of yourself, and you can catch us next on Rule of Thirds, airing every third Monday of the month. Also, our sister podcast, Don't Open This Podcast, every second and fourth Monday of the month. Bye.